Saturday morning, late 1998. You're standing in the power tool aisle at a Home Depot, and the wall in front of you climbs to the ceiling. Yellow DeWalt boxes, red Milwaukee boxes, the black and gold Black & Decker cases stacked 6 high. Every name a working man knew on site. There was one red box that never showed up on that wall. Not that year, not ever. The company that made it, Hilti, pulls in 6.3 billion Swiss francs a year and has never set a single product on a shelf like the one you were staring at. Its headquarters sit in Liechtenstein, a country you could drive across in 15 minutes, smaller than the land Disney owns outside Orlando. 40,000 people, no airport, and a tool empire the whole construction trade quietly runs on. Here's the part nobody explains. Hilti would rather you never bought the tool at all. It earns more when you don't own it. So, how does a company get rich refusing to sell you its own product? No shelves, no dealers, no cart. I've bought power tools my whole adult life, and I've never once owned a Hilti. No American homeowner has. That's not a hole in my garage. It's the entire strategy, and it took me years to see it. 3 decisions turned a bankrupt garage into that empire, and I'll take them in order. Somewhere in Milwaukee, there was a man this story quietly ended. A man Hilti never met, never undercut, never even competed with head-on. We'll get to him. And the same trick Hilti pulled is being run on you right now by a company probably sitting in your retirement account. So why would a manufacturer spend a fortune to stop you from buying its own product? And how does a company smaller than a theme park take on the largest retail supply chain in America and win? The refusal. On January 27, 2026, Hilti reported 6.3 billion Swiss francs in sales for the prior year. Every franc earned without a store, a dealer, or a retail shelf anywhere on the planet. The 6.3 billion is what one direct human relationship earns when you scale it to 30,000 salespeople across 120 countries. And in the year 2000, Hilti pushed that relationship somewhere no rival dared follow. It stopped selling its best customers tools at all. Nothing about the tools changed. Everything about the money did. That strangeness starts in a garage. In 1941, 2 brothers opened a machine shop in Schaan, a Liechtenstein town of a few thousand. Martin Hilti was 26, trained in mechanical engineering. Eugen was 30 and ran the garage. The founding carries a history the company has since acknowledged itself. Martin Hilti backed a Nazi-sympathizing movement in Liechtenstein, edited its newspaper, and in 1941 volunteered for Waffen-SS training in Germany. The workshop's ties to Nazi Germany won it armaments contracts, and it grew past 100 workers producing almost entirely for the German war machine. Late in life, Martin Hilti called it service to an inhuman regime. It's on the record, and it doesn't vanish because the company later got rich. Then the war ended. The German contracts vanished overnight, and the shop that had 100 people had no customers. For 3 years, it survived stamping out whatever it could sell: egg cup molds, cigarette lighters, pencil sharpeners. The firm that machined weapons parts was punching out egg cups to keep the lights on. In 1948, Martin Hilti bought a patent that changed everything. A piston tool that used a small explosive charge to drive a steel pin straight into concrete. No drilling, no anchor. One pull of the trigger. By 1957, he'd turned it into the DX100, the first fully automatic powder-actuated nail gun, and it rewrote how things got fastened on a job site. Then came the decision that defined the next 70 years. Every rival sold through distributors and let the store handle the customer. Hilti refused. It built its own sales force, Hilti employees in Hilti trucks
driving to job sites to put the tool in a contractor's hands and let him fire it into his own concrete. The demonstration was the sale. It cost a fortune. A rival paid a wholesale price to drop tools on a shelf. Hilti paid a full salary, a truck, and benefits to place one tool in one man's hands. It pours roughly 7% of its sales back into research, far more than the industry treats as normal. That's around 460 million francs a year. Now picture a mid-level brand manager at a legacy tool company in Milwaukee spending a decade perfecting shelf placement at Home Depot. Which drill sits at eye level? Which end cap moves units? He was excellent at his job. He was optimizing a channel Hilti had already decided to erase. Refusing to wholesale was decision 1. Decision 2 took 50 years to arrive, and when it did, a Harvard Business School team measured customers 5 times more loyal than anything a store could ever produce.
The invented brand. A parking garage pour in Cleveland. A Tuesday just past noon. The foreman's hammer drill quits cold, halfway through a wall of anchor holes. He doesn't drive to a store. He doesn't file a warranty claim. He makes one phone call and keeps his crew moving on the tools they've still got. The next morning, a loaner is already in his hand, and a replacement is on its way before anyone's even come to collect the dead one. No invoice. No argument about whose fault it was. The crew never lost a shift. The loaner showing up before the broken tools even picked up. That's the detail that stopped me. Every other tool you've ever owned, the day it dies is your problem and your bill. Here's what that quiet phone call really means. The one company on earth that profits when your tool never breaks is the only one that never sold you the tool. Harvard Business School put numbers to it. Loyalty under that leasing model ran about 5 times higher than tools sold over a counter, and the profit per customer was outsized. Hilti earns more when a tool lasts, because a tool that lasts costs Hilti nothing inside the fixed monthly fee. Now hold that against what the rest of the industry believed. Black & Decker told the market that charging hard into consumer retail was the road to scale and brand dominance. The reality? That push so thoroughly wrecked the brand's standing with professionals that the company had to invent an entirely new name, DeWalt, in that unmistakable yellow, and pretend it wasn't the same firm just to win the contractors back. That wall of yellow boxes you grew up seeing at Home Depot was a rescue operation. But the tools were never really the point, and this is where the whole story flips. Every Hilti salesman who walked a job site walked out with something worth more than a sale. He saw which fasteners were failing, which competitor's drill was choking on the dust, where every crew in his territory was bleeding time. The sales force wasn't a sales force. It was an intelligence network wearing a tool belt, feeding the factory a live map of every problem worth solving next. Which is exactly how a company that never ran a store learned which contractors to lock up first. In the year 2000, it stopped selling them tools altogether and made the man in Milwaukee's entire shelf irrelevant in a way he'd never see coming. The monthly number. In the year 2000, Hilti launched Fleet Management. The contractor stops buying tools and pays one fixed monthly fee, and Hilti owns them, so every repair, every theft, every dying battery becomes Hilti's problem, not his. It inverts the whole economy of ownership. Buy a tool, and every break and every stolen unit is your cost and your paperwork. Lease it, and Hilti now earns the most money when its tools refuse to break. That's the opposite of planned obsolescence. Every rival profits when the tool dies and you buy another. Hilti profits when the tool survives. The honest case against it is real. Over the full life of a tool that never breaks, never walks off a site, never drowns in the rain, buying it outright is cheaper. And every month you lease, you build no equity and hand one vendor total control of your equipment. For a small crew that babies its gear, ownership still wins. Hilti's bet is simply that almost no crew is that crew. Its rivals had every chance to copy the model. Milwaukee had the same access to the same job sites. In 1975, it was sold to Amstar, then Merrill Lynch, then Atlas Copco, then TTI. 4 owners in a generation, and not one of them kept a man on the site. Martin Hilti did the opposite. In 1979, he locked every share into a family trust, a structure built so the company can never be sold, taken over, or stripped for parts by a private equity buyer. No activist could ever force the sales force to be cut. The patience the model needs was written into law. You've seen this before, and you probably own a slice of it. Caterpillar, the one in your industrial fund, booked a record $24 billion in services revenue in 2024, not from selling machines, but from renting the uptime on 1.5 million connected ones. Rolls-Royce sells jet engines by the flying hour. Xerox stopped selling copiers and started leasing the printing. The tool company in Liechtenstein wrote that playbook decades before Wall Street gave it a name. And in 2022, Hilti went further than any of them. Its Neuron battery platform is cloud-connected. Every time a battery touches the charger, it reports its hours, its health, and its location back to Hilti. The tool you rent is also a sensor. And the brand manager in Milwaukee? I can't give you his name. Hilti never filed one, and neither did his employer. But the role was real in every legacy tool company in the 90s. His shelf placement spreadsheet never lost. It just stopped mattering. Hilti hadn't outbid him for the end cap. It had walked his customers off the retail floor entirely, onto a monthly lease he had no product to answer. Martin Hilti made a distribution call in a Liechtenstein garage. A man in a Milwaukee cubicle lived the consequence 40 years later, perfecting a shelf for customers who'd quietly stopped shopping. If you've stayed with me this far, and most people are gone long before now, subscribing helps me keep taking these apart. No pressure. Because here's what the model quietly takes. Every time you rent instead of own, the software you lease, the tools you don't touch, you give back 2 things you used to keep: the asset and the complete record of how you used it. Hilti now holds that record for thousands of job sites, updated every time a battery touches a charger.
Verdict. In the year 2000, Hilti stopped selling its best customers tools. Now we can say exactly why it worked. Martin Hilti spent his life removing every point where a customer could walk away. First the store, gone, replaced by his own man at the door. Then ownership itself, gone, replaced by a number on a monthly invoice. Then, in 1979, the exit for the company itself. Gone, locked in a trust so no buyer could ever undo the other 2. And each piece reinforced the last. The direct sales force was never really about selling. It was a listening post that told Hilti which contractors to capture and which problem to solve next. The family trust meant that while Milwaukee changed hands 4 times, Hilti couldn't be flipped, gutted, or talked out of its own patience. The lease made durability profitable, so Martin Hilti built the one company on Earth that got richer the longer you went without needing to replace a single thing. That $6.3 billion? It's the price of a relationship no competitor can enter, billed by the month, in a country smaller than a theme park. I used to read a rental model as a company being generous, taking the hassle off the customer's plate. I don't read it that way anymore. Now I read it as a company quietly deciding who's allowed to leave. So the question worth sitting with: If you hold industrial or aerospace funds, Caterpillar, Rolls-Royce, Deere, how much of what they call services revenue is really you and people like you renting back things you used to own outright, on terms you'll never get to see? The documents are public. Draw your own conclusions.